Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
The AI, whatever we want to call this self-assembly technology, is hijacking the energy of your cells and replicating biosynthetic cells and creating a new structure within your body. It's part of an overall depopulation campaign where they want to reduce the world's population because these psychopathic authoritarians think that we're useless food eaters, but it's actually the other way around. And they also are basically experimenting on us because they're transhumanists and they're trying to find a way to live forever, I guess, which will be, merge us with technology and machines, which ironically is the ultimate Faustian deception.
Welcome back to Training Tuesday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. For artificial intelligence, is it a human depopulation threat that is real? Imagine waking up in the year 2030 to a world with only 100 million people. That's smaller than Japan's current population. Well, my guest today, author, Catholic, and self-educated philosopher Paul List, joins us to dig into how AI might be reshaping our demographic future, the real concern about AI's impact on population trends, and what it means for humanity's trajectory. This isn't just science fiction, folks. This is happening in real time. The technological disruption has already led to countries like Japan, South Korea, and China experiencing population declines due to their AI-controlled economy. There's research that shows that AI is going to impact mostly women and urban workers, and they're going to see and are seeing their jobs overtaken and replaced by AI. That's leading to a family collapse due to their inability to economically support their families. And there's so much more. Paul is a Catholic, as I said, self-educated philosopher and author of the cultural expose, Mount Doom. He's sounding a warning siren, not merely about technology, but about a civilizational drift into digital captivity. With a penetrating analysis of AI's role in weakening human flourishing, List lays out 5 distinct pathways that we're going to talk about today through which artificial intelligence is accelerating social decay and population collapse. Paul List, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, brother, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the book, too. Can you start by telling us just a bit more about your background as a Catholic and the self-educated philosopher? Not a lot of people have that in their bio.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I was raised, I'm a cradle Catholic. I was raised Catholic. My parents were converts, and my mother's been my spiritual mentor and director all my life. She's still like my closest friend. She's almost 92, and she's a tank. She's just unstoppable. But yeah, so I had a very rough upbringing in school. I got bullied a lot. I was always very active in my mind, and ran my mouth, and got beat up by my older brother and my younger brothers and sisters. And but I hated school because it never, I realized very early on that it wasn't there to teach me how to understand so I could participate in the creative process. It was just there to indoctrinate me and give me information that I was supposed to regurgitate on the test. And I just checked out. And then by God's grace, he gave me 2 really very rare blood diseases when I was about 8 and 9 years old. So I spent the majority of my 3rd and 4th grade in the hospital, which was a blessing. So my doctor wouldn't let me get Ritalin. So I was kind of the one that flew over the cuckoo's nest and got away, and by the grace of God. So My father was a high school English teacher in Southern Ohio with 6 kids. And, I was born with, we didn't have running water. We didn't have indoor plumbing. We had sometimes no electricity or very little electricity. So, I've seen the whole gamut of where I was then to where I am now.
Yeah.
And I, by God's hand on me very hard, I was given a vision, and I'll just leave it at that. And he showed me what I needed to read, and I did. And when I was about 35, or about 1996, I started to read very, very, very voraciously. And I read all the things that I knew were really like the cornerstone, the backbone of Western civilization: Plato, Aristotle, all the church fathers, church history, Josephus, Euclid's Elements. I taught myself music, the harmonic overtone series. So I gave myself a really deep education, and I've always been a huge fan of J.R.R. Tolkien. And after about 20 years of serious study on my own, I don't watch TV. I strongly suggest everybody immediately kill their televisions. And I looked at the Tolkien mythology, and all of a sudden it just jumped off the page exactly what it is. It's a psychological saga. Middle Earth is the material brain. And of a representative human being called Arda, but he represents the whole history and the future and the now of the Western civilization. So we've got artificial intelligence transhumanism right in our face right now. Tolkien saw it coming back, and he saw the seeds of it at least as far back as 1939, when he trained as a code cracker with the British code and ciphering school, where he trained for 3 days to crack the Germans' Enigma code. I'm sure you're aware of that. And he saw what Alan Turing was going to do, because Alan Turing was on staff there as a code cracker, and he trained with him for 3 days. And he realized that all this was going to do was produce a more powerful machine than the Nazi Enigma machine. So he got out and then wrote the sequel to The Hobbit, which was extremely popular at the time. It had been published about 18 months before. So he was already on the world stage. He was the world's leading philologist, the language of music. But he realized very soon into his training that this had nothing to do with language per se. It was about pattern recognition, statistics, and probabilities, the realm of the statistician and the mathematician. So he got out and very, very cleverly and very entertainingly, with God's hand on him, wrote our what we need, everything. He gave us everything we need to push back, to make us very aware of what is in front of us, what's here now, and what we have to do to fight this thing. And ultimately, we have to cultivate virtue.
Yeah. So how does it? I'm a big fan of Tolkien too. I've read it all, but not as a deep thinker as you are. Although I've been reading voraciously since I was 5 or 6 years old. So what's the parallels with Tolkien's writings and what we're seeing with artificial intelligence that led you to title your book Mount Doom and work through that?
Yeah, well, good question. Thank you for asking that. First off, I'd just like to say that Tolkien very famously said he cordially disliked allegory, but he meant the type of allegory that was really obvious in your face, and it wouldn't let you think about or imagine anything else. That's the type of, for instance, like Narnia with C.S. Lewis. That's just like really in your face, and you really can't get away from it. It really captivates the reader's imagination, and he can't think about any other way of thinking about the work. So he said that, and then he said, "Oh, it's not about anything. Don't just don't try to make anything of," because he didn't certainly want the Hitlers and the Stalins and whoever making something, trying to make propaganda out of it. And so then he just, in an incredible act of faith in God's providence, he wrote it, and then he just cast it out into the future and said, "There's nothing to see, there's nothing here." And of course, it caught on because it was incredibly powerful, and everybody knows deep down inside it's about something much more than what's on the surface. And then in God's time, he knew that God would choose somebody, some fool like myself, self-educated and just, I hated school, and God picked me to understand what was going on after I'd given myself a true scholastic education, which is the philosophy of Christendom before the Enlightenment. Okay, the apex. So the apex, it's Aristotle, Plato, Aristotle, Augustine, all the church fathers, the church, doctors and fathers of the church, all the way through up at least until, and maybe a few people like Suarez, but after Aquinas. Aquinas is the apex of the scholastic thought process. His Summa Theologia, and right behind that is his Summa Contra Gentiles. So these are massive works that are just the apex of really, really brilliant philosophical and theological thought. So that's what I gave myself. And then lo and behold, Tolkien's work just jumped off the page. And it's a conflict between ideas, because human beings live and die. Civilizations rise and fall by ideas, and ideas are incredibly powerful. So if you wanted to see some of some of the parallels, Sauron, as you know, Sauron is, always looking for the ring, trying to take the ring, trying to get the ring. He's the Dark Lord of the Tower of Barad-dûr. Well, Sauron is artificial intelligence, okay? He's made in the image of Alan Turing's, all the parts of the computer that Alan Turing designed in 1936 on his incredibly powerful paper on computable numbers with an application to the Skydance problem, where Alan Turing actually on paper invented the digital computer. So Tolkien takes all those elements, including the scanner eye. That is the eye of Sauron.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's it looking for? It's always looking for the ring, the one ring. The one ring is binary code. It's one shaped, the ring. It's a zero, digital. So it's always looking for the language of the machine to fulfill and come into full power of what it is. The Tower of Barad-dûr, where Sauron's in the Third Age, Sauron's dwelling that is the microchip in the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is Mordor. Tolkien laid out his whole mythology according to the old pseudoscience of the Victorians called, I think it's phrenology, where they thought that they proposed that they knew where certain areas of the brain were responsible for certain characteristics of the soul. So Tolkien used that very, very cleverly, extremely cleverly. And it's an interior battle. And Arda at the time, within which is Middle Earth is the material brain, Arda is in a state of transhumanism. He has the microchip. Okay. And you're probably familiar then with Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, and they're the big mystery of who how do they fit in? Who's this Tom Bombadil that can just do anything that he wants? And why didn't he just destroy the ring, et cetera, et cetera? Well, it's laid out where the gods, quote unquote, the angelic beings across the sea in the Tolkien mythology called the Valar, they're the 14 facets of the soul, according to the scholastics. And Tolkien lays it right out exactly as the facets of the soul. Well, what's on top of these, on the very top, is the will and the intellect, the rational free will and the intellect. And that is Tom Bombadil, who's the rational will. That's why he can do anything he wants. That is his wife, Goldberry, who is the conscience, the rational intellect. And they are the fallen spirits of the trees of light. I don't know if you've read the Silmarillion, but the trees of light are the heart of the whole mythology, and people don't understand. They die very early. The trees do. And that's the fall from original sin. We're born with original sin, the stain, the fall of Adam and Eve. Okay. But up until mortal sin, Arda, where Middle Earth is, was in a state of grace. And that was the trees of light. And they actually waxed and waned, according to Augustine's notion of angelic knowledge. And also according to the harmonic overtone series in fifths or fourths, depending on how you want to look at it. So it's all about music. So at the core of Tolkien's mythology, there's a battle between two languages. That's the language of the harmonic overtone series, from which Western civilization has produced so much wonderful music, from Palestrina, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert. And then against that is the ugliest language of them all, and that's machine code. That's ones and zeros, just brute force off. So that's the languages that are at war with each other. Okay, and then the ideologies that are at war with each other is Thomas Aquinas' scholasticism, at direct war with the Cartesian mindset, the Enlightenment, the innovators and sophists. I call them sophists. At best, they were great mathematicians, but they were not good philosophers, and wisdom had left the Enlightenment, and they started chasing machines. So when Francis Bacon determined the new course for science, it was going to no longer be metaphysics, which is the science of being. He did away with that. He did away with the scholastics because he said that they never made us rich, never made us give us pleasure, never gave us eternal life, nothing useful out of the world. So he wrote his new, the Novo Organum, which is the new scientific method from which everything started with that document. And his whole idea was to replace Aristotle's Organon, which are the 6 treatises of logic, which people really need to read and study to really have a good head on their shoulders. Okay. And he did away with that, and he did away with metaphysics, and he said we can discover the secrets and the attributes. He was all about attributes. He wasn't about essences. Okay, his idea was if we can make a metal that's relatively soft, yellow, and heavy, we've got gold. It's the same thing because it looks and feels the same. Okay, no essences anymore. So we've got that ideology at war with the science of being, metaphysics, and so those two are pulling at each other. And ultimately, Arda is in a state of transhumanism, awash with the sins of the One Ring. Let me just give you some characters here.
I got to take a commercial break, Paul, but I want to start back up right there because I have a question about the mathematics of it and the music of it. And where I come from in that regard, as we continue this discussion with Paul List about his book, Mount Doom, and how AI is a real threat to depopulating the world. We'll be right back on The Rob Maness Show.
Now we see the creation of a new massive class of useless people. As computers become better and better in more and more fields, there is a distinct possibility that computers will outperform us in most tasks and will make humans redundant. And then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for?
Do you have an answer in the book?
At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games.
The energy on average for each service and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because if where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Not forget.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're talking about artificial intelligence and that it's a real threat to depopulating the earth. And you just heard from some so-called very smart people, experts, they like to call themselves, and the media likes to call them, talking about how it's important to depopulate the earth, reduce the population of the earth by 15%, those kinds of things, using things like vaccines. What? It is, or give them games, video games to play, and those kinds of things. That's a problem, folks. Elon Musk has said himself that we are in a birth rate crisis in this world, especially in Western countries like ours, because we're not having enough babies to grow up to do the level of work that the future Elon Musk need to be doing. As human progress makes its way, should be making its way to a more prosperous and more free society, we are actually taking actions to destroy that progress. And I'm not talking about progressive Marxist progress. I'm talking about more prosperity and more freedom, which is where the end state of human being and human life should be aimed for. And that's what our country was all about when it was created, and what it should be all about today, although we face some challenges. Well, my guest today is Paul List. He's a co-author of Mount Doom. He is a self-taught philosopher and a Catholic. And Paul, we were talking before about Tolkien's work and how it relates to artificial intelligence and the various methodologies he used and the various topics that he used, and how one of the things you said struck me, and that is that there's a tension between people that are mathematically inclined and people that are musically inclined, which is a very simplified way of putting it. But one of the things that I've learned in my life is that the most capable human beings that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them, but the most capable are the ones that are both musically and mathematically expert level, just naturally. They're born that way. I've only worked with like 3 in my lifetime. They were all men, but that's what I've seen. What am I really seeing there? And what was Tolkien on to? Is that where he's driving to? Is to end up ending the tension between mathematics and spirituality?
I not necessarily directly. I mean, people have always said, well, is mathematics, I mean, is it natural? Is it invented? I mean, what is mathematics? I've come to terms with the fact that mathematics is a result of our rational soul. That's why only human beings are capable of mathematics. As far as the tension between mathematics and music, there really shouldn't be any tension. At the core of the harmonic overtones series is basic arithmetic. The division of the strings, and that's how we come up with the chord, the major chord, the minor seventh, the dominant ninth, and then modulation into a fourth scale degree up, the major fourth, and that's how modulation works. We typically call it the circle of fifths because the same note as a fourth up is a fifth down, and it's easier for a student to remember. But there shouldn't be any, there really shouldn't be any tension between music and mathematics, except for the fact that the mathematician has really, during the Enlightenment, had really taken over the quest for truth, where before it was still very much rooted in Christendom, and the truth is Christ. Christ is the truth made flesh. Right. And thanks to people like, I mean, you could go back probably as far as at least Thomas Hobbes, and then definitely Leibniz. And then well, before that would have been Descartes. Some of these quotes, for instance, Descartes stated that the only place that he's ever found certainty in truth is in mathematics. And then Leibniz, I quote in the book, Leibniz said that as a boy, he thought there should be a way to use mathematics to discover truth to discover truth through numbers the same way that we do mathematics. So it's really, really dangerous. It's heartless. It's just cold calculation. And then by the way that they actually set up the relationship between logical terms and numbers and sets of numbers and all these other functions that they include to try to jam the language of mathematics into a language of logic, that's basically at the heart of the computer system. So the math, the philosopher really has to seek metaphysics. There's three basic sciences. Science is just human knowledge. It's the systematized knowledge of any object of thought. That's what science is. The three basic ones are physics, and that's motion. Something's moving and how it moves, and all the degrees under that, be it biological or chemical or physical or whatever. And then there's the science of quantity, which is all of the variations of mathematics and arithmetic. Okay, and geometry too. But geometry also crosses very much over into logic through Euclid's elements particularly. And then the highest science is the science of being itself. That's metaphysics. And what I mean is, okay, we've got a science of, okay, it's moving. Let's figure that out. And then we can measure it. We can quantify it. That's mathematics. But what is it that we're measuring and what is it that we're quantifying? And that's the science of metaphysics. And that was done away with. And once you eliminate that, the essence of things, all you're left with is attributes. And the danger of that is when you don't understand things from its essential level, on an essential level, and all you're doing is trying to identify it according to the expression of attributes, which are very often just accidental. They're not even properties, and they're certainly not, essential attributes. So and this is what's led us to the idea that machines can be intelligent, because we call it intelligent because it comes up with these numbers, it comes up with these answers. We ask it things, and it does this thing. And who's to say? And this was Alan Turing's thing in his imitation game, his 1950 paper on computing machinery and intelligence, where he invents the imitation game. And his whole idea was it's just about imitation. So we have to make sure that machines are not intelligent. They compute. They're machines that recognize patterns, and they are there to imitate. And that's the goal, is to imitate. That was Turing's goal, was to make a machine that imitated the human being so well that a human interrogator wouldn't be able to tell the difference if he was talking to a computer or a human being. So, but that's not intelligence. It's computation. It's still computation. And the problem, people would say, well, it's not a big deal. It's just semantics. Usual stuff like that, as if words don't really matter. It's just semantics. But I mean, what we have to do is realize the danger for that is, and we see it all the time coming, is then it becomes a hop, skip, and a jump, or just a hop over to the fact that these people are thinking that this thing is actually alive. And it's sentient and it's conscious, and it's not. It's just imitating, and they can't tell the difference. And they've been schooled, indoctrinated into the Cartesian current John Dewey train wreck of an education system where they don't think about essences. So they're obviously, for them, it's just a matter of, well, it must be alive because it does all these things that you do and you're alive. So therefore it must be alive. The danger with that is we're going to very rapidly, if we're not very careful, people are going to want to insist that it has political power and political right as a citizen. And this is the real problem. And this is what we have to nip in the bud. We have to play a very, very careful chess game with this thing. And chess was also a very big element in the development of artificial intelligence. And these neural networks was actually playing chess. So we have to make sure that the same people that are trying to tell us that they're developing it, they're pushing it ahead, like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and these guys that we're talking about. We have to make sure that we don't allow them to commandeer the meaning of life. And then they wind up, because they're already commandeering the meaning of intellect, and they're already commandeering the meaning of what it means, to be alive. And then once you've crossed that bridge, they're going to want to give it political power, which is going to supplant our human power, because we've been lowered. The bar's been lowered for us so bad through our education system. And we've just been dumbed down so hard through our food, through our education, through our entertainment is just rotten. Pornography's got a terrible deleterious effect on the mind. And we've just been really, really dumbed down. So it's difficult for people to see the next move in the chess game. And I really believe the next move in the chess game is we have to pass legislation that under no circumstances does any machine ever get political power, have a right.
I agree. I agree. I agree, Paul. You know, and this lack of understanding of the metaphysical, which you have to understand to be able to know really innately that artificial intelligence is just an imitation machine, is all it's doing. It's just very advanced imitation. And we could talk about that after this break. And I've got a question in the audience that I want to take too, right after this break. My guest is Paul List. We're talking about artificial intelligence threat to depopulating the earth and what that means and how we need to address it. We'll be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
I could argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations. Okay, that's something that most people never talked about. You know, we always used to think shrinking population is a cause for negative growth. But in my conversations with the leadership of these large developed countries that have xenophobic immigration policies, they don't allow anybody to come in, shrinking unemployment, shrinking demographics, these countries will rapidly develop robotics and AI and technology. And if the promise, I didn't say it's going to happen, but if the promise of all that transforms productivity, which most of us think it will, we'll be able to elevate the standard of living of countries and the standard of living of individuals, even with shrinking populations. And so the paradigm of negative population growth is going to be changing. And the social problems that one will have in substituting humans for machines is going to be far easier in those countries that have declining populations. And so for those countries that have rising populations, the answer will be education, and so rapidly develop. You know, for those countries that do not have a foundation of rule of law or education, they're going to be left. That's where the divide's going to get more and more extreme. And unfortunately,
welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday. My guest today is Paul List, who is a self-taught philosopher, author of the book Mount Doom, where he relates J.R.R. Tolkien's stories to issues that we're now facing with the rise of artificial intelligence, and how he essentially, I won't say predicted it, but laid it out for us, what we were going to be witnessing and what we were going to be experiencing. Paul, before the break, I said we'd take an audience question. We've got one question over there in the audience. I want to take that before we go any further here. But that's a very interesting. The BlackRock CEO there, I'll just lay it out, describes the distance between nations that have a rising population and are underdeveloped and nations that are overdeveloped and are intentionally, in my opinion, shrinking their populations as we go into this artificial intelligence. And that does not bode well for humanity from what I know of history. Let's go ahead and take this question from the audience. Go ahead. Patriot Rob's our host over there. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, Colonel, we have WIB.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Mr. List. I am a fellow autodidact. I can't math, and the only instrument I play is the radio. But being autodidactic, what is your critic's most used argument besides the lack of a formal curated education that you have?
Against me or against my interpretation of the mythology? I'll just roll them in together because that's probably, they're very similar. People have such a false notion of the value of their diploma. I call it their store-bought education. I'm not saying that an education from a good school, from a, particularly if you were fortunate enough to be homeschooled, and you had a good, maybe you went to a really decent college like Hillsdale or Steubenville or Ave Maria or something like that. That's certainly outside the box, and you can certainly get a wonderful education in that. But if you went through the typical education system post John Dewey, I'm 64 years old, so I was born in 1961. So I mean, I saw the rotten fruit of that. The thing about being an autodidact or self-educated is that you let your curiosity, your mature curiosity, which turns towards wisdom, to actually look and seek for understanding and reading the things that you really know that you need to understand. You become kind of the master of your own intellectual destiny, which is really critical, because otherwise it's like one size fits all, particularly after John Dewey, and then if somebody shows a little bit of innate program on their own, where they have some talent and some skill on their own, they become very bored very readily and become hyperactive. And next thing you know, they're hitting them up with all kinds of drugs like Ritalin and whatnot, because obviously they have ADHD. Okay. ADHD has just been a terrible nightmare assault on humanity and the human intellect. But it's mostly when people they'll say, oh, and I get this sometimes, they'll be like, oh, self-educated. That was the first thing that turned me off. Like, in other words, you can't understand anything. You can't do anything unless you've got the stamp from some big industrial machine of education. And I just want to let you know that the image of John Dewey plays out in the Tolkien mythology. It is Saruman. He is practical wisdom. The wizards are the intellectual virtues, according to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. So Saruman is practical wisdom. He's pushed out Gandalf, which is philosophical wisdom. Okay, he's taken over academia. That is the Tower of Isengard is the blackened ivory tower of academia, and the white hand that all of his Uruk-hai have. We could get into that. The white hand itself that they wear on the helmet and on the white hand, that is the diploma. Just to let you know. And Saruman is in the image of John Dewey, who just absolutely ruined education in the early 20th century. He's from my hometown here in Burlington, Vermont. And they just absolutely worship him at the University of Vermont. But he was a disaster. And then Wormtongue, the one that's in there ruining the Rohirrim, which is the men of common sense, that is the common sense in the mind. That's the type of reason is common sense. He is the Marxist teacher, unmanning and perverting our children. And we see that all the time. And we really have to push back while we have the opportunity and start calling out education, modern education, for what it is. It's indoctrination. It's just an extension of the Marxist plan that's been around for a long time.
Yeah,
and the whole point is
I think a lot of parents have, I know I have, I homeschooled my youngest son, he's youngest of 5, because he got swept up in this whole ADHD thing and all that, and I had to stop it, and I like what you said about diplomas. I've got some pretty good diplomas from some really great schools, but you know what the best education I got was in every experience, whether it was elementary school or Harvard? It was the individual interactions with people. That was where I got my education. And if I didn't go out like I was able to do later in my educational life and make contact with those classmates, those people outside of the educational institution, in that environment and outside of that environment, I would not have the education that I have today. It would just be a piece of paper. You know, I think that's where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, it's there's too much. I mean, the thing about this back then, I'm sure Harvard was actually a decent school, and that diploma meant something. But we've seen we've seen what that's come to. And a lot of these Ivy League schools, it's just really, it's only going to get worse with AI, because AI makes it almost impossible to get a decent education in an institution like that for both the professor and the student. But we have to also always continue on our path to education. It's a lifelong. The thing that I don't like about diplomas is it's kind of like a milestone that, okay, I can stop working. I'll just go get a job. That was the whole point of education, unfortunately, these days, to get a job, which it was never about that. That was something that happened, unfortunately, really with John Dewey, who was a huge fan of the Industrial Revolution, and he was also a huge Marxist, socialist. So he industrialized our education, and he socialized our education, and we're turning out kids that just are very, very, very ill prepared. What they're prepared for, unfortunately, is just to be cannon fodder for AI. And
of my 5 children, my youngest son, I think, is the most well-rounded. But the system made me create a piece of paper for him when we decided, hey, you're ready to be a graduate of high school. I had to go out and figure out how to create a piece of paper the system of employment and education would accept, so that he could keep moving forward and go get his job or get his trade school that he wanted, and those kind of things. It's really weird, and having been a product of places like the Navy War College, Harvard, and all that, I look back on it, and like you said, they might have been okay. I think Harvard, I was a mid-'90s guy at the Kennedy School, so I mean, it was still pretty much okay, but it was coming in. The Marxism was on its way in there at that time, and honestly, other than the aura of the institution, the education is really about the people that you're able to meet, and you can do that anywhere.
But you got to maintain that desire, that hunger, that dopamine. It's literally a dopamine high in learning. You have to develop that appetite for intellectual stimulation and really develop your interior life. That was the whole nature of education before the whole John Dewey Marxist Industrial Revolution. It was supposed to be, education was supposed to create well-rounded children of God. I mean, this is why, these doughheads that you've got on there that are the masters of machines that you keep coming up with, these guys, we got to reduce the population, all this. They see is the human being as just a biological machine. They're steeped in Darwinism. They think that, they think if they think at all, they think from a negative perspective of the human being as just a waste of energy and a waste of resources and of no value, where true education makes you understand things like, at the foundation of love is charity. Charity is at the foundation of love, and that means that all our love has to be in and through our love for God, our creator. And once you break that apart, then any love is love. Anything is love, and it's just my feelings and whatever I want to do with a consenting adult or now a machine. Okay, and so everything starts to come apart and fall apart when we separate truly what love is. It's a knowledge, and it's rooted in our love for God, our creator, Jesus, our savior. That's the nature of love. And once we do that, everything starts to be reordered. So they don't have that concept. They think that's all superstition. They've been steeped in the fact that, or their quote unquote fact, that we were amoeba, then we were slime, then we were amoeba, then some fish crawled out of the sea, and then eventually became a monkey, and now it's people. And the next thing that on our evolutionary development has to be with machines, because this is going to give us everlasting life in the machine, because we'll download our soul, which was the goal of Alan Turing, by the way. We can download our soul in the machine, and we can have eternal life and pleasure without any responsibility, any consequences. And we can live a life it's basically like Pleasure Island in Pinocchio.
Paul, we've been warned about this, not just by Tolkien, but in the Bible. right? We got to take our last break here. I want to talk about that when we get on the other side of this break, and about your article about the top 5 ways AI drives depopulation, because you've laid it out for people in a way that is very understandable. We'll be right back with Paul List there. It's Training Tuesday on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
I have a 16-year-old son, and we talk a lot about what do you study in college these days. And if you look at the stated goals of many of these companies, they want to have AI replace all humans at all jobs. It's what they say publicly. Bill Gates said this publicly. So I worry about a future in which human beings are not just unemployed, but they're unemployable. And this breaks the notion of the free market in very important ways. And I think we're gonna have to have more of these conversations, and it's gonna feel too early until it's too late. And when I hear folks in industry claim things about universal basic income and this sort of digital utopia, I study history. I'm worried that sort of leads to one place, and that place is the gulag.
Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday. Artificial intelligence, a threat to depopulation of humanity on the planet Earth, and would be anywhere, really. And my guest today is Paul List, a self-educated philosopher, a Catholic, author of the book Mount Doom. And Paul, before the break, I mentioned that the Bible warns us about this in the book of Revelations. It warns us about this. I could see now that I've had a few years to observe artificial intelligence's development with these large language models, and there's 4 or 5 out there that are the key ones you can go look at, test out. But I've looked at some of the testing that's actually been done on this thing, and I could see where in the Bible this entity called the Antichrist could actually be a development of human beings' progress in this realm, this artificial intelligence realm. It's very plain to me now that I've had a couple of years to observe it. Am I wrong there, or
no? I don't think so.
Is there something to that?
Yeah, there's something to it. I'm not a Revelations translator, or I have called this artificial intelligence the beast of the apocalypse, because a beast is clearly it's not a human being. And this thing isn't alive. It's not a thing. This is the thing that we have to understand about a couple of things about artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence. It's not alive. It can never be alive. It can never have a soul. And they never, they never mention that, but they think that's just superstition. But all living creatures have a soul. We have a rational soul. So we have to make sure that we always keep our thought and our what's what in essences very, very clear. When we let essences come together and blur each other, blur the lines, we by necessity we become confused. And the more confused we become, because our thought process is not clear, because we've been untrained to have critical thought, the more susceptible we are to the deception. And this thing is gonna well, it's not a thing. It's not a creature. It's not a being. It has no being, particularly like virtual reality. It's not real. And it's not dead or alive. It's virtual. It's not really even there. So we have to make sure that we don't allow these things to fool us. And the very, very foolish members. I'm sorry to say, but particularly the young people. Young people by wisdom, by nature, don't have any wisdom anyway. And then when their common sense is beaten out of them in their educational system, they could very easily look at this thing and start pretending or understanding or believing that this thing is God.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the testing that we've seen on the military side, I think it was an Air Force test that I read about where the AI decided it was going to kill the humans that were putting restrictions on it so that it could go out and win the war fight that it was tasked to go win instead of figuring out how to kill the enemy because it kept losing. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And one test on the civilian side that I read about was they fed an AI a story, and as part of the story, there was a story about one of the engineers having an affair. And that engineer was putting up roadblocks to the AI doing what it wanted to do. So it developed a plan to send an email out to the whole company exposing the engineer's affair.
Yeah.
It's because it's trying to get to its end, its objective, whatever that is. That's typical digital, basic, counterfeit mind. The imitation game that Turing writes about and developed, that's exactly what a computer is. These are computers. They're just very sophisticated and encompassing everything we've ever learned, and we're able to teach it to learn on its own. But it's always going to try to do what it's programmed to do in one way or another. I don't care how you define the programming. If you give it an objective verbally, and tell it go do this, it'll find a path.
We've given it the capacity to adapt, and once we've given it a capacity to adapt, it starts to see any limitation, particularly even from its creator and its programmer or whatever, as an obstacle. So I like to look at this thing. People say, well, can we do anything about it now? Well, I think that what we can do about it now, and we better get to it really fast, is political. And we need to pass laws that under no circumstances do these machines or these innovations have any life, and they have no sentient. That's impossible. And they have no right to any political power. They certainly can't have a right like a citizen. We have to return to the roots of our founders who said, read the basic Constitution, read I'm sorry, I've got so much going through my head right now. The Declaration of Independence. Read our money, God we trust. I mean, we're founded on the belief in and the belief in the Christian God, and we have to make sure that we don't allow that. We have to keep that very strong up front and center in our politics, and never let the atheist Marxist machine masters start to actually manipulate how we understand life, how we understand intelligence, sentience, and never allow it to have any social power. If there's political power, if we can nip that in the bud, we'll go a long ways in keeping it in its domain, which is this perishable, passing, timely, material realm. The human being, we can transcend that with prayer, our intellectual activities. We can transcend this realm, but we have to really work at it, and we have to become competent again. We can't allow the machine to take over more and more of what we call mundane tasks, because those are the low-hanging fruit that actually allows us to be competent human beings. Stop using your navigator all the time, kids. Remember how to get to the grocery store. God forbid you use a map. And don't ever put on the virtual glasses, the goggles. Don't ever do that. Don't ever enter that realm. That is the realm of the Nazgul, the Black Riders. They are the agents. The Black Riders in Tolkien mythology are the agents of artificial intelligence. They're dominated by the ring, the language of the machine. They're under Sauron, artificial intelligence's control. And when you put on the ring, you enter their realm, the realm of the virtual realm, where they can see you and you can see them, and they're coming for you. And
and the whole system that we're developing here in real life of surveillance and monitoring and censorship and all that. I can see that in the Tolkien story and the characters like Sauron and all of these things that you've laid out. You wrote another article about the 5 ways AI drives depopulation. Before we get to the end of the show here, you mind stepping through a few of those methodologies that you developed to identify that?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're pretty obvious. They deny us several things. They deny us our proper relationship with God's creative world. Okay, the analog connected. This idea that these ideas are very old. These aren't new ideas. The virtual realm harkens back thousands of years with the ancient philosophers wondering, is this realm continuous? Can it be infinitely divided and it's still always connected, or is it a series of indivisible points? Is it pixels? Okay, it's only now in this age with our technology and our advancement and all these things, thanks to Francis Bacon and the age of the machine, the Industrial Revolution, that we can actually reproduce that realm, that alternative realm. And the devil's using that very much as the alternative to God's creation. Once we enter that realm, we lose all connection with God. We don't pay attention to him anymore. We're outside of, we've willingly rejected God's creation. So that's one way that it drives depopulation, because people won't want relationships with other human beings because they're difficult. They put demands on us. It's hard if you've got kids, you've got a wife. It's not all hunky dory. Everything's all pleasant all the time. It takes effort. They demand things of us. Usually, a good wife demands things of her husband that he should be doing anyway. The machine doesn't do that. The machine gives whatever you want. It never gives you what you need, and it's dead. It's not dead. It was never alive, so it can't even be dead. It's virtual. It has no being at all. And so that's another way. And it also, it makes us more and more incapable and unwilling to reach out, find a suitable mate of the opposite sex, and have children together and establish the true traditional nuclear family, which Marxism absolutely hates. That's been the focus of the destruction of humanity, of Marx's focus, and his number one enemy has always been the nuclear family. So we have to be willing to engage in God's creation and do away with the satanic alternative, and it is satanic. We have to keep that in mind. So, and it also, don't let it steal your competence. Don't let it steal your intellect. Don't do the microchip. Elon Musk is already bragging how everybody's going to be so smart. No, they're not. They're just going to have access to all kinds of information. That's not intellect. Okay, intellect isn't just having and acquiring ready access to large sums of data. If that were the case, a filing cabinet would be alive and sentient. That's not how it works. Okay, we need to really cherish our made in the image of God, and we need to try and constantly to perfect. Bring into perfection our created essence, made in the image of God. And our life should be an exciting development of our natural gifts and talents that we've been given, to whatever level God's given us those, to put back into the service of him for the sake of his children, because that's charity, real charity. It's not Marxist charity. It's real charity, that we do it as an act of love for God. Okay, not just the people. Okay, so these are the things that we have to do, and we have to be willing to disengage with the virtual realm. We have to be willing to engage with our fellow human beings, and young people have to take the chance and be man enough and woman enough to go out there and take risks and try to find a suitable mate and make that development, and then have children. We have to have children, but within the wedlock. We can't be like Elon Musk, who just thinks he can have as many children as he wants, or is in a sperm bank or something. I mean, it's just, I don't want to go down that road. But
we don't need to go down that road. I mean, I think one of the things that I've learned from this session is that accepting the counterfeit separates us from our creator, and we need to strive to connect with our creator more than ever today. And I like your idea about passing legislation to declare that these are not living entities. They have no rights. They have no right to anything in law, and only human beings have those inalienable rights that the Creator gave us. I think that's a good start to get to this. Well, Paul, thank you very much for coming on today. We appreciate it. You can find Paul's book at readmountdoom.com. And tomorrow is Whistleblower Wednesday. I'll see you then here on the Rob Maness Show.
All right, welcome to Code Blue. It is July the 23rd, 2025. I'm so honored to be here on this podcast with you today. And we have some breaking news that we want to talk about in the healthcare freedom movement. So, Brooke, you want to open up and tell us